Hello and welcome to Edumate.tv. I'm Chetan Shah. We learn to live and live to learn in what has turned out to be an unprecedented situation. With history being written across the geography of Mother Earth. And a minor virus has created a major catastrophe, making us reset, reboot, rethink, rewind before we rebuild a new world, a new normal, particularly in education. There's one trait that's required amidst this confusion to build up that new world, and that's the trait of wisdom. Wisdom at the top. Wisdom to learn from past experiences and knowledge, and the wisdom to be able to anticipate, embrace, and evolve with the new normal. And that's why, at the helm of India's higher education, we talk to the man who's the wisest, the Vice Chancellor. Welcome to the Vice Chancellor. Today we have a very special guest from the beautiful climatic conditions in the beautiful Himachal Pradesh. In Baddi, we have Mr. Abhay Kumar of the IEC University. What a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you for joining us on this very special broadcast.
At the outset, Mr. Chetan Sharma ji, I am really very thankful and privileged to have been given this opportunity to share my views with Edumate.tv. And really, you are doing a very immense work in terms of highlighting the way higher education and school education should go forward.
It's a pleasure to be speaking to you. What have been your learnings from the COVID environment?
This is somewhere around the 16th or 17th of March. At that point of time, we tried to tell our students and encourage them to know and understand what COVID-19 is. And if it comes to India, how will you be able to protect yourself from that? That was the first instruction manual which we issued then. And what the students did in turn, that was laudable, was they produced about 100 liters of sanitizers in the School of Pharmacy laboratory with the help of faculty and technical staff. And they distributed it in the villages around even before, just about 2 days before the lockdown. Then the disruption started, the lockdown started. We were all confined to the four walls of our homes, even the students, whether they were school children or higher education children. So we at that point of time didn't have an LMS at IEC University. To be very honest and precise, we were not fully prepared or geared up because it was quite unexpected and sudden. So in terms of online teaching, our faculty members were motivated to start with uploading videos on the YouTube, say uploading course curriculum materials on the website and on the email IDs using WhatsApp groups. Then of course the learning management system was put in place and online teaching came in full swing somewhere around the 27th of March. Since then, we have not looked back. We have not only made our faculty members take classes of the course curriculum, but we have also requested them to upskill and upgrade themselves in terms of technology upgradation. So the tech-savvy young faculty members and the seniors got together.
Right.
And we all did it.
Really?
Right now, we are in the process of almost completing our online exams also, sir. We have taken mental wellness classes as well, apart from the regular course curriculum, for all the students of the university in the past 2.5 months.
Brilliant. So you've done a complete 360. Really laudable. My conversations, across several stratas of the education ecosphere have yielded a couple of issues which are really challenging. I think you mentioned one of them, that was teacher training. And the other, of course, is the very sinister digital divide. Because there's a lot of people who don't have access to devices to receive and be able to be a part of online education. Have you also faced these problems?
The digital divide, of course, has created big problems initially, because what I can understand is that whatever we could have thought of developing in the next 5 years, we had to do so in the last 40-45 days time. But I think the educational institutions have lived up to it, even at IEC University. All our faculty members, in fact, they have worked much harder than they would have done in the normal days. We have a system of mentorship in place, in which every faculty has got about 6 to 10 students whom he or she has to mentor. Mentoring doesn't mean only looking at the academic progress of the student. It entails every aspect of the student's.
One of the hallmarks of a good and a true leader is humility. And you started your statement by saying that you yourself felt that you were not an adept. And I think that's the first part of problem solving, is to recognize the problem. And I commend you for that. And we often forget that education needs to go way beyond books. It has to be a very important part of character building. Because when you start building the character of a citizen, you start building the character of a nation. Now let's talk about the nation. And we've had a lot of decisions taken by those at the helm of the nation, the government, whether it's to do with scrapping of examinations or delaying of opening, issuing some diktats by the central government, which have been contradicted by state governments. What is your experience been?
Chetanji, what I feel is that this is a pandemic and it has come suddenly and it has affected not only any state or not only India itself, it has affected the entire world. So we have to live with it, understand it, and do something positive in terms of how we accept living during the pandemic and post the pandemic in the new normalcy. So if the states have been given the liberty by the center to decide how to go about it, I think they are at the best to understand and know as to what is happening within the state. The chief ministers are the best persons to know. However, the report which is then submitted to the central government decides the overall purview of the country. I personally feel that best governance starts from the villages, the panchayats, the gram pradhans. It comes over to the mayors in the small towns and cities, then to the chief ministers, and then to the central government. So this is the best form of government.
And perhaps that's true. It's about time, we've been advocating the need for having cooperative federalism, and you're also alluding to that. But a fallout of that on the education domain may also be seen post the COVID environment because of the fear that the underlying fear which continues, within the citizens. It may result in a lot of the students and their parents ensuring that, education is localized and the student is not sent outside their state. Would you see IEC at a disadvantage or an advantage?
I personally feel that IEC University would be at a distinct advantage because our university is located on the beautiful foothills of the Shivalik Mountains. It's a lush green campus with a beautiful state-of-the-art infrastructure, and we are only about, say, 30 to 35 kilometers away from Chandigarh and very located on the borders of Haryana and Himachal. Now this year, the numbers of online applications coming from the regional and the local level has increased. So we were pretty surprised.
Yes, but that would be a bit of a pity because, amalgamation of society is also very key. You need universities to become melting pots and people from all states coming in because they get a new sense of character, a new flavor, a lot of interstate learning, different backgrounds, and apart from that also, you tend to leverage the best from the various states. That would be a bit of a miss, right?
Chetanji, I do agree to some extent. In fact, we also have students from various states of Jammu, Kashmir, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, even Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh also. But then we have to understand that this is not going to be a permanent phenomenon.
Sure.
Maybe for a year or two, because mankind has a penchant for bouncing back from any crisis which it has faced in the past also. When we talk about amalgamation on the national level, we would also feel that amalgamation in the global level would be depriving the students in the times to come.
Yes.
Say for a year or two. So a year or two would not matter much if I feel that the children of a country are safe and healthy and they are getting education and good education, quality education at their doorsteps. So why not take advantage of that instead of wasting a year?
In that capacity, sir, then we'd like to hear from you as to what IEC has got on offer. Do confirm that IEC is very adept with the new normal career options which will be unfolding as we move forward, because employability is very key and the relevance of topics of study are paramount.
I'll give an example, Chetanji, how concerned we are for students' employability. Let's start from the final year students whose offers were withdrawn, some of them, this year. It has not only happened with us, it has happened with almost all the education institutions, including IITs and IIMs.
Sure.
Actually, our university is situated in an area which is the biggest pharmacy hub in Asia, Badi. So we have a very good rapport with the pharmaceutical industry around. And what has happened is the pharmacy placement has been 100%. And when I say 100%, it is actually 100%. The rest streams, I can say 70 to 90 as of now. What we have been trying to convince the students and parents is that being unemployed wouldn't be good for you. Being underemployed is better, at least for a year. If you are offered a salary of say 50,000 somewhere, now if you get you a job at 2025, I think you should take that job, gain experience, consider it as a project.
Right.
So we have tried to mentor them, convince them on this aspect. Secondly, what we have done is that we have had collaborations with a number of industries recently. Just before the lockdown, we were fortunate to have done it. IBM, Honda two-wheelers, Okinawa electrical vehicles, ARB bearings, and Shiv Naresh. So what has happened is that these collaborations with industries has given us hope that some of the students would be directly taken into the collaborative industries and the rest may be into the OEMs. They have given us that assurance that we would place almost all the students who are attending our training sessions, which is embedded in the course curriculum of BTech, for instance. Then we come to the next situation, sir. I personally believe in the sharing of resources. We have to share our resources during these difficult times. So I initiated having a collaboration, unwritten collaboration with some private universities nearby in the region. And initially I faced a challenge when I asked some of them that we could share our classes with each other. Teaching 60 students online by a very good professor of an university, say 60 more students joining the same class will not matter much. Or a very good video prepared by our faculty members, suppose the School of Engineering or Pharmacy, can be made use by some other university because the syllabi are almost, the basic concepts are almost the same. So initially I didn't get much success. But when I myself took upon the mantle of teaching management, being a man of management in one of the other universities, saying I would start it by teaching them, they came back. And what I believe is, sir, that whenever you bring a new change, try to bring a new change, there is resistance to it.
Sure, there is.
But ultimately people come to the
quite remarkable, not just the flexibility, but the open-mindedness and the perseverance you've shown in pushing that open-mindedness. But that having been said, tell me a little bit more about Mr. Abhay Kumar. You've had a commendable career. Talk us through that.
When I was in school, St. Joseph's Collegiate, Allahabad. In fact, whatever I am today is because of my headmaster, one mentor who changed and transformed my life. And not only my life, but the life of every student in my batch and in all other batches. We adore him. In fact, when we pray to the Almighty, we pray to Him also for giving us what we have. That is the sort of mentorship we require today. I did my BSc schooling in Allahabad, then my BSc and my MBA from University of Allahabad, where I was in a hostel which was known as Mayor Hostel or Dr. Amarnath Jha Hostel. We were groomed at the school level by my headmaster, then groomed at the hostel level and the university level by some very good faculty members there. So the point I stress now is not that grooming is only on the part of the mentor or the teacher or on the environment. Grooming depends on the person who should be receptive enough to receive that grooming. So that is how I try to tell my students that the sun shines for all. But then to receive it, you have to stand below the sun. You have to take the rays onto your body so that the rays of the sun help you. And my message to my students is always that I am with you, for you, and you have to somehow try to get what you can from the best from the faculty members and the staff. This is your onus.
Tell us, what do you think is required to make education a sunshine sector?
If we really want to make education a sunshine sector, as you said, initially the leadership has to be very open. And they have to not only be open, but try to moot out new ideas, new things like skilling. We talk about skilling, but what sort of skills are we doing? We are simply giving them a course structure to study. We have to give them on-hand projects to do. So when we want the sunshine in the education sector, I believe that we must all be wedded to the concept. I use the word wedded to the concept that we are not here just to teach, we are here to transform lives.
Absolutely.
We must believe.
We are trying to build an ecosphere which is far more responsive, which is far more relevant, which is far more responsible. What would be your advice to the several players in the education ecosphere? The student, the parent, teacher, and vice chancellors like yourself.
Let's start with myself, because I said that the base of the pyramid can be strong if the right message comes from the top. The vice chancellor has to be very clear about the concepts, what exactly does the university stand for, and what we wish our faculty members, deans and HODs to deliver. That vision should be very clear. A vice chancellor may be a vice chancellor because of the experience and the age and maybe the degrees he has acquired. It is the chair which is important, sir, not the individual. I always believe in that. I believe in collaborative leadership. That means all the individual faculty members and deans are close to me in terms of knowing and understanding what I exactly want out of them. If they have any difficulties, they would simply come back to me, just like a younger brother or a younger sister. This is the sort of environment I have tried to build. As far as the students go, we have to tell them that we are there for them. They don't have to worry. First thing is, they should feel that this is university of their own. They should come to us with ownership, and any problems, even the vice chancellor's office is open for any student to drop in any time, of course with a protocol. So in fact, why am I there? I am there for the students. So it has to come as a mentorship and a relationship between the university, the faculty members, the vice chancellor, the parents and the students. We have equally important contact with the parents also. The parents, the teachers as well as the students are three corners of a triangle, wherein if both three are well balanced, I think the career of the student is secure, the university will definitely grow, and the teachers would be very, very responsible to what the vice chancellors and the leadership does there.
Remarkable. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to learn from your clarity, your open-mindedness, your practicality, your understanding of relevance, your understanding of the human mind, your level of anticipation, your level of proactiveness, and your level of gratitude. And you remembered your own headmaster, and of course, above all, your humility. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful learning experience, and you've truly been the Vice Chancellor.
Thank you, Chetanji. So nice for giving me this opportunity.
And one final word on our initiative at EduMate, sir.
You are going to go a long way, sir. And this is the commencement of a long journey. Because, the way you have started this, the perception and the orientation behind this particular channel is education, both higher education and school education. And if our children are groomed properly, and I think your contribution to this would be immense, I think the country would go forward and we would achieve what I'm just saying that the Honorable Prime Minister wants, because every time I feel whatever he says is something which is going to make India have a niche space in the global level. So I think you are going to go a long way, sir, and I would love to always keep track of how you are going, and of course contribute even a bit to the way you are building up things in the education sector. Thank you so much, Chetanji.
Thank you so much for your encouragement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.